"You're not getting a single dime from me." That's what he said, with a smirk on his face, sipping a beer, lounging in his brand new apartment while I was sitting there, begging him to help support his own son. I could still hear his voice echoing in my head. Why should I pay for a kid I barely see? You wanted the divorce, you wanted custody, so deal with it. And then he blocked me. Blocked my calls, blocked my messages, blocked his own child. Meanwhile, he was out flashing his new life for the world to see. Expensive vacations, fancy dinners, a shiny new car. Money wasn't the issue. He had plenty of it. But responsibility, that was something he wanted no part of. At first I felt helpless. I cried. I begged. I tried reasoning with him, reminding him that this wasn't about me. It was about our son. But he didn't care. He was so sure that he could dodge child support that I would just deal with it like he told me to. He had no idea who he was messing with. Because while he was out there spending money like it was nothing, I was gathering every piece of evidence I needed to take him down. And when the court was done with him, he would wish he had just paid up. At first I tried to be patient. I told myself maybe he just needed time. Maybe he was overwhelmed. Maybe he was still adjusting to life after the divorce. But deep down, I knew better. The first month after the divorce, I sent him a text. A simple reminder. "Hey, just checking in about child support. Let me know when you can send it over." No response. A week later, I sent another. "Hey, haven't heard back from you. Just making sure everything's okay." Still nothing. The second month, I decided to call him directly. The phone rang once, twice, then straight to voicemail. I tried again. This time he answered, but only to say, "I'm busy. I'll get to it later." Then he hung up before I could say another word. That later never came. By the third month, I was done being polite. I called him again. This time he picked up with an attitude. "You're still on about that?" He laughed. "Let it go. I'm not paying." Then he hung up. That was the moment I realized he wasn't just avoiding it. He thought he could get away with it. The first time I saw him bragging about his new life online, my blood boiled. There he was, posting selfies on a yacht with a drink in hand. "Living my best life," the caption read. Meanwhile, I was at home rationing groceries to make sure our son had enough to eat. Another time, he posted a picture of a brand new luxury watch. "Hard work pays off," he wrote. Hard work? This man hadn't worked a day for his own child. Then came the vacation photos. Cancun, Italy, Dubai. I scrolled through his posts, my hands shaking with rage. He had plenty of money, just not for his son. He didn't just refuse to pay, he got creative with his excuses. One time he claimed he had lost his job. "I'm broke. I can't afford child support right now." But a quick search on LinkedIn showed he was still working, just under a slightly different job title. Another time he claimed he had no assets. "I don't have any money, I swear." But his Instagram said otherwise. One photo showed him standing next to a brand new Mercedes. Another showed him at a high-end steakhouse, holding a glass of whiskey that probably cost more than our son's monthly school fees. Then came his worst stunt yet. He quit his job on paper, pretending to be unemployed so that his income couldn't be traced. I couldn't believe it. This man was literally gaming the system just to avoid supporting his own child. But I wasn't stupid, and I wasn't giving up. I sat at the kitchen table that night, staring at the stack of unpaid bills. Rent, groceries, medical expenses, all on me. I clenched my fists. He thought he could walk away without consequences. He thought I would just deal with it like he told me to. He had no idea who he was messing with. So I did what he never expected. I started doing my own research. I read every child support law I could find. I joined online forums where other single parents shared their experiences. I reached out to a lawyer explaining my situation. And most importantly, I started gathering evidence. I screenshot everything. Every social media post showing his expensive trips, luxury purchases, and work events in five-star hotels. I pulled up bank statements proving I had been covering everything alone. I got emails from his employer confirming he was still employed. And every ignored message, every smug excuse, every time he tried to gaslight me into thinking I was the problem, I kept all of it. Because I knew this wasn't going to be a simple fight. I was going to have to destroy him in court. And I was ready. I walked into the courtroom with my head held high, gripping the thick folder in my hands. Months of frustration, anger, and sleepless nights had led to this moment. and I was ready. Across the room he sat there, my ex-husband, dressed in an expensive suit, lounging in his chair like he didn't have a care in the world. He looked bored, as if this was just another meeting in his busy schedule. Sitting beside him was his lawyer, a high-profile attorney I knew he had paid a ridiculous amount for. Of course, he could afford it. He could afford everything, except apparently his own child. He glanced at me and smirked, like this was already over, like he had already won. I gritted my teeth. He had no idea what was coming. His lawyer spoke first, painting him as some kind of victim. "Your Honor, my client has faced significant financial hardship over the past year," the man said smoothly. "He is not refusing to pay child support. He simply does not have the means." I almost laughed out loud. Hardship! This man had just spent 2 weeks in Dubai, lounging on yachts and dining at 5-star restaurants. And then, right on cue, my ex put on his best performance. "Your Honor," he sighed dramatically, shaking his head, "I love my son. I truly do. But I've been struggling. It's been tough. I just need more time to get back on my feet." He sounded so sincere, so convincing. If I hadn't been the one chasing him down for months, begging him to take responsibility, I might have believed him, but I knew the truth. And now, so would the judge. I stood up when it was my turn. My heart pounded, but my voice was steady. "Your Honor," I said, handing a thick folder to the court clerk, "I'd like to present evidence proving that my ex-husband is not only capable of paying child support, but has actively gone out of his way to avoid doing so." The judge took the folder and flipped through the pages. And just like that, his smirk disappeared. Inside that folder was everything. Screenshots of his Instagram, flaunting his luxurious lifestyle, bank statements showing his steady income, email confirmations from his employer, proving he had never lost his job, receipts of his vacations, his car payments, his $500 steak dinners. And the final nail in the coffin, text messages. Messages where he explicitly said, "You're not getting a dime from me." The room fell silent. His lawyer glanced at him, frowning. His confident posture stiffened, his hand tightening around the armrest of his chair. He opened his mouth as if searching for an excuse, but what could he possibly say? The proof was right there. He was caught. And for the first time since this all started, he looked genuinely scared. The judge set the folder down and turned to my ex-husband, his face unreadable but his tone sharp. "Mr. Carter, it is clear from this evidence that you have deliberately avoided your financial obligations to your child," he stated, his voice firm. "Not only do you have the means to pay the child support, but you have gone out of your way to avoid it. You have lied to this court. You have lied to your ex-wife, and worst of all, you have abandoned your responsibility as a father." My ex swallowed hard. His lawyer shifted uncomfortably. The judge continued, his voice cold and final. "Due to your blatant disregard for the court's previous orders, I am issuing the following judgment." The courtroom was dead silent. My ex's hands clenched into fists. His entire body went rigid, and then the hammer dropped. "Effective immediately, all missed child support payments will be paid in full." A slight gasp rippled through the room. My ex's face paled. "Additionally, your wages will be garnished to ensure future payments." His breath hitched. "A lien will be placed on your assets, including your recently purchased luxury vehicle." His mouth opened, but no words came out. "And should you fail to comply with this order," the judge added, "you will face jail time." A sharp intake of breath came from his side of the room. His lawyer's face drained of color. My ex turned to him, eyes wide, panic setting in. "Do something!" he hissed under his breath. His lawyer only shook his head. There was nothing to do, nothing to fix. The law was the law, and for the first time in his life, money couldn't buy him a way out. The judge dismissed the case, and the moment the gavel struck, my ex exploded. "This is insane," he barked, turning to his lawyer. "Fix this. Get me out of this." His lawyer merely closed his briefcase. "There's nothing to fix," he muttered. My ex's face twisted in rage as he stormed toward me. "Are you happy now?" he hissed, voice low and venomous. I met his eyes, calm and unshaken. "I'll be happy when my son gets what he deserves." I turned away, walking out of that courtroom without looking back, because at the end of the day, it was never about revenge. It was about justice. And finally, after all these months, justice had been served. I stepped out of the courthouse, inhaling the crisp air like it was the first deep breath I'd taken in months. It was over. The weight that had been crushing me for so long, the constant stress, the endless nights of wondering how I would make ends meet, was finally gone. But for him, the nightmare was just beginning. I hadn't seen my ex-husband panic like that since the day we signed our divorce papers. Inside that courtroom, he had walked in with confidence, thinking he would outsmart the system. But now he was trapped. And the first blow came faster than even I expected. That very afternoon, his bank accounts were frozen. Every single penny he had hoarded, every bit of wealth he had been flaunting online, locked. By the end of the week, his wages were being garnished, directly funneled toward the child support payments he had spent so long avoiding. The irony? If he had just paid from the beginning, he would have gotten off easy. But now he had a mountain of back payments to make up for, and the court wasn't about to give him any mercy. The man who once bragged about his 5-star vacations and luxury lifestyle was suddenly drowning in debt. His brand new Mercedes, seized. His apartment, evicted within a month. And that expensive lawyer he hired dropped him the second he realized there was no way out of this. He tried everything to fight back. Filed an appeal. Tried to stall payments. Tried to find loopholes. But there weren't any. Every time he tried to wriggle out of his obligations, the court tightened the leash even more. And when he missed a single payment after the ruling, they reminded him exactly what was at stake. A bench warrant for his arrest, jail time. That was enough to finally scare him into submission. But money wasn't the only thing he lost. He had built his life around his reputation. He was the flashy businessman, the guy who always had money to throw around, the one who loved showing off, making sure everyone knew how successful he was. But after that day in court, people saw him differently. His co-workers whispered about how he had refused to support his own child. His friends, many of whom were fathers themselves, distanced themselves. Even his family, the ones who had once defended him, had nothing to say, because no matter how much he tried to spin it, the facts were clear. He had failed. As a father, as a man, as a human being. One evening, about a month after the ruling, my phone buzzed. I glanced down. His name on the screen. For a second, I considered ignoring it, but then curiosity won. I answered. He didn't even say hello. "Are you happy now?" His voice was sharp, filled with frustration. I leaned against the counter, exhaling slowly. "I'll be happy when our son gets what he deserves." Silence. Then his voice dropped lower. "Look, this is ruining me." I didn't say anything. "I lost my car. My accounts are drained. My boss thinks I'm a joke." He took a shaky breath. "I don't have anything left." I closed my eyes, shaking my head. "That's not my problem." "You're really going to do this? After everything?" I laughed bitterly. "You mean after everything you put me through?" More silence. "I just need a little help, okay? Maybe you could talk to the court? Work something out?" I almost choked on my own laughter. "You want me to help you? After you left me struggling for months?" "It wasn't like that," he muttered. "It was exactly like that," I shot back. I could hear the desperation in his breathing, the way his voice trembled. He knew there was no way out of this, and for the first time he understood exactly what he had done to himself. "Please," he whispered. I took a deep breath. "Take care of your son." Then I hung up. And this time, I blocked him, for good. That was the last time I ever spoke to him. And honestly, I felt nothing. No guilt, no second thoughts. Because this wasn't revenge. This was justice. He had spent months running from his responsibilities, believing he could just ignore them, but in the end, they caught up to him. And me, for the first time since the divorce, I could finally breathe. No more stress, no more wondering how I'd afford the next bill, no more waiting for a call that would never come. My son had what he needed, and that was all that mattered. As for my ex, he would spend the rest of his life paying for the choices he made, because karma always comes back around. For the longest time, I believed that doing the right thing meant being patient. I thought if I just explained things clearly, if I just reminded him what really mattered, he would step up, that he would see reason, that he would understand his duty as a father. But the truth, some people don't change, not because they can't, but because they don't want to. You can't force someone to take responsibility. I spent months waiting for my ex-husband to do the right thing, giving him chances, trying to be civil, trying to remind him that this wasn't about me. It was about our son. But to him, child support wasn't a responsibility. It was an option, one that he thought he could simply ignore. He convinced himself that he was too smart for the system, that he could lie, manipulate, and walk away without consequences. But here's the thing about responsibility. It catches up to you, eventually, one way or another. Karma always comes around. He thought he had won. He thought he could spend his money however he wanted while I struggled. He thought the court would take his side, that I would just give up. But what he didn't realize was this. The truth always comes out, no matter how many lies he told, no matter how hard he tried to dodge a reality. The evidence was there. And when the moment came, it destroyed him. He lost everything, his money, his reputation, his power, all because he thought he could run from his responsibilities. But life doesn't work that way. You can dodge accountability for a while, but sooner or later it will find you. And when it does, it won't be forgiving. Standing up for yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. For a long time I felt guilty. I worried that I was being too harsh. That maybe I should have just let it go. That maybe deep down I was the one causing trouble. But looking back now, I know I did the right thing. Because fighting for what's fair, fighting for your child's well-being, that's not being petty. That's being a parent. Too often people, especially women, are told to just deal with it, to not make waves, to accept less than what they deserve. But why should we? Why should we allow people to walk all over us just because they think they can? The moment I stopped playing nice and started fighting back, that's when everything changed. And if there's one thing I learned from this, it's that you should never feel bad for standing up for yourself. Because if you don't, no one else will. At the end of the day, this wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. It was about teaching my ex-husband a lesson he should have learned a long time ago. Being a parent isn't a choice. It's a lifelong responsibility. And if you try to run from it, the world will make sure you pay the price, one way or another. What about you? Have you ever had to fight for something that was rightfully yours? Did you ever have to stand up to someone who tried to take advantage of you? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your story.